The invasion that should have been easy. They arrived in silence. No warning, no message, no declaration of war. One moment, Earth was buzzing with routine broadcasts and satellite pings. The next, all major communications blacked out. Orbiting telescopes caught a glimpse. Massive ships the size of cities sliding into Earth's exosphere like shadows in the fog. The Zorth Dominion had come. To them, Earth was an unclaimed rock teetering on the edge of galactic charts. Its people were classified as Tier 2 sentients, undeveloped, emotionally erratic, and technologically backward. Conquest, the Zorth believed, would be swift, surgical, and absolute. They were wrong. The first strikes came over the Atlantic and Pacific rims, orbital bombardments on military installations and satellite networks. The Zorth didn't even bother disguising their approach. They wanted humans to watch, to see the futility of resistance. Within 6 hours, every global government declared martial law. Old enemies formed emergency coalitions. A new command center, UNDEFCOM, United Defense Command, was activated, and its leadership fell on the most unlikely of figures, General Arya Kane. She wasn't the most senior. She wasn't the most decorated. But she was the only one who had spent the last decade studying off-world tactical theory. When she warned the UN Security Council 3 years ago about extraterrestrial threat scenarios, they laughed her out of the room. Now, they begged for her leadership. Arya didn't waste time. Her orders were clear and immediate. Do not fight them like we fight each other. Fight them like we've got nothing left to lose. In the North American quadrant, General Kane operated out of the old Cheyenne Mountain complex, now reactivated and repurposed with hybrid tech salvage from deep space probes. Earth's first line of defense wasn't its weapons. It was its unpredictability. The Zorth launched low-orbit terror drones to intimidate cities into submission. Arya turned off civilian internet access and fed the drones false geolocation data. Drones began bombing empty malls and ghost towns, while resistance fighters filmed their own counterattacks and hacked them into alien channels. Psychological warfare. In Europe, Arya ordered the formation of rapid response shadow squads, small, mobile units that use terrain, weather, and raw human guts to hijack enemy drop pods and feed their AI misleading tactical maps. In the Pacific theater, a Zorth warship, farthest, attempted a decapitation strike on Tokyo, only to be grounded by EMP traps and overwhelmed by Japanese and South Korean special ops teams who used nothing but old-school explosives and mountain tunnels. Every move the aliens made, humanity countered with something no simulation could predict. Emotion, rage, desperation, hope. The first time Emperor Zarlan V addressed Earth, it was not from a throne, but from the bridge of his flagship orbiting above Earth's shadow. His voice, metallic and condescending, was transmitted across every hijacked frequency. Primitive inhabitants of Terra, your time beneath the stars is over. Submit to the Dominion. Lay down your weapons. Offer your leaders in chains. Resistance will be met with extinction. General Kane didn't flinch. She didn't broadcast a response. She sent a data spike back up the transmission line, one that embedded a virus in their broadcast systems. The next time Zarlan tried to speak, Earth played back a loop of an orangutan throwing a watermelon at a security camera. The insult echoed across every Zorth vessel in orbit. Back in the war room, Kane studied orbital movements and ship formations like an ancient general watching bird flight. They think we're easy, she said to her staff, because we're emotional, but emotions make us unpredictable. That's our advantage. Her chief of strategy, Colonel Mehta, nodded. They're trying to provoke surrender before committing full force. Maybe they're stretched thin, or maybe they're scared, Arya muttered, more to herself than anyone. 2 weeks into the invasion, the Zorth suffered their first total defeat. In the frozen wastes of Siberia, a rogue cell of engineers and scientists, ignored by UNDEFCOM, had developed a gravitational inversion cannon from stolen CERN blueprints and asteroid mining equipment. When the Zorth sent their siege crawlers across the ice, the cannon fired once. An entire battalion of alien walkers flipped skyward and vanished into the stratosphere. The victory sent shockwaves through Earth and ripples through Zorth Command. Earth wasn't just resisting, it was innovating on the fly. The Emperor ordered an emergency summit among the Dominion's high generals. They debated, escalate or negotiate. Zarlan, pride wounded but not broken, sent one last message. Bring me your commander. We will settle this in council. General Kane read the message, looked at her staff, and cracked a rare smile. Tell him I'll see him on Luna Prime. As Earth's defenses stabilized and scattered rebel groups unified under Kane's command, something shifted in the Zorth's tone. Their attack slowed. Their speeches grew less threatening. Rumors spread that the Emperor himself would descend to the neutral moon for direct talks with the humans. Earth's representatives feared a trap, but Kane knew better. This isn't about winning, she said. This is about showing them we don't break. And as she suited up for the journey to Luna Prime, her only comment was, let's go remind them what it means to be human. The meeting on the neutral moon. Luna Prime wasn't Earth's moon. Not anymore. It had been terraformed over decades by the Galactic Council as a diplomatic sanctuary. Nestled in the Sea of Tranquility, the Council's citadel was a glass spire ringed with silver towers and orbiting security drones, a place where galactic disputes were settled without blood. Until now, the arrival of the Zorth flagship, Dominion's Fist, cast a literal shadow over the spire as it hovered silently in geostationary lock. Every ship in orbit gave it space. The message was clear. The Emperor had arrived. From Earth, the human delegation boarded a hastily retrofitted shuttle. At the center of the team was General Arya Kane, dressed not in ceremonial robes or diplomat garb, but in her battle-worn tactical armor. No medals, no flags, just her. She didn't want to impress. She wanted them to remember. Inside the Citadel, delegates from across the stars gathered in the Grand Hall, an amphitheater of polished obsidian and floating translator drones. As Arya entered, whispers rippled through the alien observers. Some had never seen a human in person. Others only knew them as the violent new race, making waves in the outer sectors. The Zorth delegation entered last, flanked by towering honor guards in glistening black exosuits. Then came Emperor Zarlan V, 9 feet tall, scaled skin pulsing faintly under a royal cloak. His eyes, gold with vertical pupils, scanned the room like a predator evaluating prey. He wore a crystalline diadem of power, rumored to be passed down from the first conqueror of the Dominion. He didn't look at Arya immediately. He stood before the crowd, spreading his arms wide as his booming voice echoed. Witness this historic moment. The Dominion of Zorth offers the primitive world of Terra a chance at survival. Bow, and you may rise as vassals. Refuse, and your species will be nothing but ash beneath the stars. Murmurs spread across the chamber. The council delegates, neutral by law, shifted in their seats, watching for Earth's response. Arya stepped forward slowly, calmly. Her eyes locked onto the Emperor's. She didn't look up. She made him look down to meet her gaze. You came to our world uninvited, she said, her voice even. You killed our people. You called us primitive. And now you demand that we kneel. Zarlan let out a deep, guttural chuckle. You should feel honored to even stand in my presence, female. Your kind survives only because I will it. Arya took another step closer. The guard stirred, but Zarlan raised a hand. We could have glassed your planet. We chose mercy. Do not mistake it for weakness. I don't, Arya said. I mistake it for cowardice. That silenced the room. Zarlan's nostrils flared. He stepped forward, towering over her. You dare insult the Emperor of 10,000 systems. I don't recognize your title, she said flatly. You're just a thug with a bigger stick. He reached down, clawed hand brushing her shoulder, an attempt at dominance, until Arya struck. One swift motion. Her hand arced upward, slamming across the Emperor's face with the force of a lightning bolt. The sound cracked through the chamber like a plasma discharge. The room went dead silent. Zorth guards tensed, weapons humming, but Zarlan froze. His eyes widened. For the first time in centuries, someone had touched him uninvited. Disrespected him, not cowered before his power, but challenged it. And not with a weapon. with something far more dangerous: defiance. The council chamber braced for war, but Zarlin didn't raise a hand. Instead, slowly, unbelievably, he stepped back. One hand rose to his face, his clawed fingers gently touching the fresh red welt forming on his cheek. He blinked, twice. Then he laughed. Not a mocking, arrogant laugh, but something short, sharp, and uncertain. "You're mad," he said. "You humans are truly mad." Arya didn't respond. "Very well," Zarlin said. "Let be known, the Dominion will consider terms for peace." Gasps erupted across the room. Council drones blinked in astonishment. Even the Zorth guards hesitated, exchanging glances. Back in the Earth shuttle, her aides were speechless. Colonel Meta finally asked, "General, did you plan that?" Arya looked out the window at the massive Zorth ship, now powering down its orbital weapons. "No," she said, "but I knew he'd never met anyone who wasn't afraid of him." Across the galaxy, the footage spread like wildfire. A human woman slapping the Zorth Emperor and living. In Dominion space, the event was rebranded as a gesture of symbolic strength. On Earth, it became a rallying cry. Protesters waved holograms of the moment in occupied cities. Soldiers adopted the phrase "slap first, talk later." The slap didn't just humiliate the Zorth. It awakened something far more dangerous. Respect. Why they feared us. Deep within the Zorth homeworld, behind walls carved from volcanic glass and decorated with the skulls of conquered species, the High Command of the Dominion convened in shadows. The slap had changed everything. It wasn't just a blow to their Emperor's pride. It was a breach of Zorth mythology. To touch the Emperor without death was unthinkable. For a lesser species to do it and survive was legendary. But the Zorth didn't fear the act alone. They feared what it meant. "She didn't just slap him," said Lord Commander B.R. Zith, the Emperor's top military strategist. "She exposed a flaw in our code. We assumed fear was universal." Others nodded. It was true. The Dominion had spent centuries perfecting a doctrine of dominance. They subjugated weaker civilizations with overwhelming firepower and psychological terror. Compliance wasn't negotiated, it was extracted. But humans didn't behave like any species they'd encountered. They mourned, yet they raged. They bled, yet they fought harder. They didn't run from fear. They chased it down and dragged it into the dirt. The Zorth archives held a forbidden file, sealed by the Emperor's ancestors, on a long-extinct species called the Kragun. Brutal, stubborn, illogical. They'd resisted Zorth expansion for nearly 2 centuries using guerrilla tactics, suicide runs, and pure will. The Kragtun were eventually annihilated, but the cost had been catastrophic. Entire fleets lost, planets scarred, commanders broken, and now, the analysts whispered, humans were worse. Because humans had memory. They had stories. They carried the grief of Hiroshima, the iron resolve of Stalingrad, the defiance of Spartacus, the survival of Auschwitz, and the rebellion of Mars Colony 1. Where the Kragtun fought for territory, humans fought for meaning. Back on Earth, General Arya Kane became a symbol far greater than she intended. Her face, cold-eyed, expressionless in the moment of the slap, was etched onto murals, protest banners, and digital graffiti from Lagos to Lunar Base Echo. Children in refugee shelters repeated her name like a prayer. Soldiers tattooed the slap on their arms. But while the world celebrated, Kane remained wary. "This isn't over," she told the Undefcom Council. "Zorth pride isn't gone. It's just quiet." Colonel Meta agreed. "They didn't stop the war because they respected us. They stopped because they don't understand us." Arya folded her arms. "Exactly. And what they don't understand, they fear." In a secret chamber aboard the Dominion's Fist, Emperor Zarlin watched the footage of the slap for the 100th time. Not with anger, with fascination. "She didn't hesitate," he muttered to himself. "She didn't posture. She didn't threaten. She struck, as if I were just another man." He had ruled for over 100 cycles. No being had ever challenged his physical presence. Even his generals knelt at the sight of him. But Arya Kane, she looked him in the eye and dismissed the myth. That shook something loose in him, something ancient. something his ancestors had buried beneath conquest and protocol. Respect. He summoned his AI advisor, KYR, and demanded a profile on humanity. The results startled him. Earth had survived global wars, ecological collapse, and internal chaos. Humans were biologically weaker, but mentally relentless. Their greatest strength wasn't strength, it was adaptability. They learned fast, faster than any species in recorded galactic history. And worst of all, they didn't fear death. Within the Galactic Council, whispers turned to warnings. The humans slapped the dragon and walked away, one ambassador said. What happens when they realize how powerful they really are? Some called for sanctions, others for alliances. But a silent majority began a different campaign. Observation. Humanity had become a variable, an unpredictable, emotionally driven, stubbornly illogical anomaly. No longer a primitive world, Earth was now a threat or a wild card. And wild cards reshaped history. General Arya Kane knew the galaxy was shifting. She wasn't a politician, but the flood of diplomatic messages pouring in from other species proved one thing. Earth's moment of humiliation had become its moment of ascendancy. From the virile merchants of Sector 19 to the Krylon monks of the Outer Rim, new treaties appeared, offering tech exchanges, cultural invitations, and even training alliances. For the first time in human history, Earth was not alone. What do we do now? Meta asked her one morning, gazing at the sunrise over the Andes base. Arya looked out the window, silent for a while. We prepare. For war. No, she said. For the consequences of peace. The Zorth High Command remained split. The hardliners wanted revenge. An honor battle. A planetary demonstration. But Zarlan silenced them. You don't defeat humans with bombs, he said. You defeat them by making sure they never see you as prey again. And that, more than anything, confirmed what the Zorth feared. They were no longer the apex predator. They were equals, and equality scared them more than extinction. The Treaty of the Slap. The day the treaty was signed, the galaxy held its breath. Millions watched the live feed. Humans crowded into makeshift broadcast centers on Earth, from the ruins of New Tokyo to orbiting stations above Europa. The Zorth Empire, once feared across 10,000 systems, had agreed to terms not imposed by force, but by a single act of defiance. And it was time to make it real. The Council Hall of Unity, built into the neutral crust of Luna Prime, had never hosted such an event. The chamber, designed for quiet debate and resolution, now bore the weight of history. On one side, the United Earth Federation, scarred, under-equipped but proud. On the other, the Zorth Dominion, powerful, undefeated but shaken. General Arya Kane walked alone across the obsidian floor toward the central table. No aides, no ceremonial guards, just her and the treaty scroll, engraved onto adaptive crystal, symbolic and binding. At the far end, Emperor Zarlan V stood still. His war cloak was gone, his armor removed. For the first time, he wore the tunic of peace, black with silver trim, identical to the one Arya had chosen. A sign of parity, a symbol that both sides had bled and both had learned. Why do you come alone? Zarlan asked, his voice stripped of its usual grandeur. Arya placed the treaty crystal on the table. Because peace doesn't need an army. He nodded slowly. You are unlike any creature I have encountered. She didn't respond. Words weren't the point anymore. Balance was. The terms were simple, yet revolutionary. Immediate withdrawal of all Zorth military presence from Terran space. A 10-cycle mutual non-aggression pact with auto-renew provisions. Technology sharing limited to medical, agricultural, and environmental sectors. A new council seat granted to Earth in the Galactic Forum. And most astonishing of all, the Zorth would publicly acknowledge the Terran species as equals. To the Zorth, this was akin to dethroning themselves. To humanity, it was a declaration of destiny. The signing ceremony was silent, save for the hiss of the translator drones recording every word and gesture. When Arya pressed her hand to the crystal slate, her neural ID imprint shimmered in blue. When Zarlan did the same, His golden mark glowed beside hers, two signatures side by side on a document that would echo for centuries. The moment was recorded, archived, etched into galactic memory. Afterward, they stood alone. Zarlan studied her. Your people, they're not ready for the galaxy. Arya turned to face him. Maybe not, but the galaxy wasn't ready for us either. A long pause. Then, almost reluctantly, he offered his arm, not as a superior, but as a peer. Arya took it. News of the treaty spread faster than any weapon ever had. In Earth's underground shelters, cheers erupted. In orbit, warships powered down. In refugee camps, people wept. Children who had known only fear now knew something else. Pride. They called it the Treaty of the Slap. The phrase started as a joke, then became a badge of honor, then a headline, and finally, a lesson. Across Terran academies and Zorth military schools, students studied the event not for its violence, but for its transformation. They learned that diplomacy wasn't weakness, that fear could be challenged, that sometimes the smallest gesture, done at the right moment, could change the entire trajectory of civilizations. Years passed. Earth recovered. The scars of invasion became foundations for unity. Nations once at odds now built ships together. Colonies expanded beyond the asteroid belt. Humanity matured, not because it had become gentler, but because it had learned what strength really meant. Arya Kane declined every medal. She refused to run for office. She never spoke publicly about the slap. When asked, she'd only ever say, it wasn't about the slap. It was about what came after. Emperor Zarlan changed, too. He restructured the Zorth High Command, eliminating the old purity doctrines. He replaced conquest generals with scholar warriors. He invited Terran diplomats to Dominion worlds. And in one unthinkable move, he ordered the melting of the old throne of blades, the ancient symbol of Dominion rule, recasting it into a monument called the Reckoning. At its base, etched in both Terran standard and Zorth glyphs, were just 5 words. Peace demands more than fear. On the 10th anniversary of the treaty, a statue was unveiled on Luna Prime. 2 figures stood side by side, General Arya Kane and Emperor Zarlan, locked not in battle, but in mutual salute. One hand raised in respect, one hand extended in unity. Beneath the statue, a plaque bore the date and the event's now immortal title. The slap heard across the stars.